Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on our podcast, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, our guest is Roger Connors. He's the chairman and co-founder of 0 to 10. Let me give you a little bit of Roger's background because he's got an interesting background. He's a 4 times New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestselling author. He's ranked by the top 30 global gurus as one of the world's top 10 org cultural professionals. He's developed the #1 award-winning content and has published and interviewed extensively, including co-authoring the best-selling books, The Oz Principle, Change the Culture, Change the Game, and his most recent book, Get a Coach, Be a Coach. Currently, he's the chairman of 0 to 10, which is a coaching and leadership company. He was also the co-founder and former CEO of Partners in Leadership, which is a training and development company that's trained millions of people in over 50 countries. So welcome aboard, Roger. You've certainly got a little bit of experience in this sort of crazy game of thought leadership. So let's start. So if I were to say to you, I don't know, 30, 35 years ago, what are your plans? And then say to you now, how did that work out? What might that look like?
You know, it's an interesting question. I think I would say we're really glad it worked out the way that it did, but we didn't plan it. You know, it's make your plans and then watch that not happen, right? So interesting. I think probably the most important thing we did was write our first book. You know, when we started, we had our clients were all the medical device companies of Eli Lilly, and we were getting good referrals. But trying to break out of the medical device industry was really tough. We did a lot of things.
So you were starting to Partners in Leadership?
Yeah,
you started
Partners in
PIL? Yeah. Okay.
And then, so writing the book was like just an important tipping point for us to cause the business to break out the way that it did, and it all went from there. So, yeah, good to have happen that way, but didn't plan it all this way.
Yeah. So you're one of the very few in this business that has done the things that thought leaders do: write the books, create great content, be recognized for it, and such. But also, which is not the part that's as notable or as public, if you will, built a great business. PIL is a phenomenal brand, had a successful exit. I mean, that's the holy grail that most people dream of, and then transitioned into sort of new content and new stuff. So how did sort of walk us through the journey a little bit? Because I think a lot of people, I had a mentor years ago that said to me, any Dumbo can get into business. It takes a smart guy to get out. And you need to think about that when you go in. So tell me about what are the lessons that you learned when you built up Partners in Leadership and why you were able to have a successful exit?
I think initially it started with how we named our company. You know, it's Partners in Leadership. It wasn't named after us. And
that's a good point.
At that time was, it was more about personalities. And so we started with the eye in mind that, look, someday we're going to want to transition this. So we need to build the equity around something different than just the 2 principles. So that's where we started. And I think the part of it's just running a good business. When you're in that moment of trying to find an exit, what they're looking at is not just reputation and intellectual property and presence in the marketplace. It's EBITDA and profitability, right? So did you run a successful business? And I think as I look back, there wasn't a year in our 28 years we didn't have a profitable year because of the way we ran the business. So I think we were very attentive to making sure that the business worked, that the business model worked.
So I want to push on 2 things you said there. I love that, it wasn't called the Roger Connors Company, because that's the typical model or Rogers and Co. or whatever, right? So it was really named about a platform that's not married to you, right? So you've gone on and that company still thrives, et cetera. Talk about the transition, because even most content-based businesses aren't really businesses, right? And what I mean by that, they're really practices, right? You have the rock star, the named author. They do a bunch of things. They get paid to do those things. And sometimes they have other people doing things. But one of the things that was done properly, in my opinion, at Partners is it wasn't focused on a personality, but you had frameworks and models and methodologies and turned it into a business where it wasn't dependent on you. So how did you go from knowing this content works, it sticks, it provides value, to saying, okay, let's grow this in a proper way? What did that look like?
Well, part of that too was, putting the intellectual property packages together, right? So it's building the IP platform in a way that wasn't dependent upon us, that others could come into the organization, pick it up and use it with clients and have it work. And what clients remember, they don't remember our names so much as they remember our models. And
Yep.
I'll see people today and they're like the results pyramid model or the
Yep.
accountability, steps accountability. And they're like, man, that was life changing. That's what they remember. So we saw that early on and began just thinking, okay, how do we create the right model that's simple, easy to remember, highly impactful? And that was our focus. It was never about us. It was always about that.
Well, and the fact that it was models based and not charisma based, because you can, there's plenty of people out there that make a pretty good living because of their energy, their charisma, their crazy life story. But it's really, nothing is, in my opinion, teachable until it is based on a model that you can replicate and take across zillions of different people in zillions of different locations, fields, industries, functions, and say, no, this is the results pyramid. Here's the pyramid, and you got to do this, and where are you? And I think the languaging of a model is important too, so people can communicate. This is what they're talking about. When you're talking about a blue sky and I'm talking about a blue sky, we have a model that says, no, blue skies are about this shade of blue, not ocean blue, sea blue, whatever. So,
well,
I think that's important.
It was tempting. Ego's a tempting thing, right? So there were times when, we had the opportunity to try to make it about us. I remember we started pricing ourselves in terms of keynotes. We kept increasing our price.
Yep.
Trying to find that point where people would not want us to come, and they would want one of our guys to come, and that we ultimately became successful in that. But I think when we ended, I think when I transitioned from the company, we had something like 300 trademarks worldwide. So we really paid attention to developing that IP in a way that had value.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Great. And you had clients that loved it. So then you have an exit. So that's a rare thing in this space. And I guess you're a failure at retirement.
Well, I exited. I didn't retire. And
okay.
There's a difference. Okay. And of course, I signed a non-compete, so that made that. So that's how my house got done. So we finished that project, and luckily, I was able to get a carve out of my non-compete that allowed me to lean back in, because this coaching platform that we're working on now has just been super exciting and fun. And that's just in my genes. That's thought leadership, the opportunity to kind of develop scalable models that really make impact in organizations, improve the quality of life of employees, customers, everyone, stakeholders. That's what I'm all about. So I was really glad I could keep doing that.
Tell us about the book. I mean, because this is a relatively new business, but you've got great plans. You've got the book. You've got your models. Tell us the story now.
Well, it's interesting because when several years ago, one of the observations I had about transforming organizations is the impact coaching can have on people when it's done well. And I experienced that many times as myself being a coach to senior executives and organizations that I've worked with, but also just kind of watching that process. And then I started thinking about it, and I thought, why doesn't everyone have a coach? Like, why isn't coaching a mechanism that's working like throughout the entire organization, regardless of organizational level? And of course, the first instinct is, well, it costs too much, right? You can't go hire a bunch.
Yep.
Well, then it was like, well, wait a minute. The best coaching I ever facilitated was coaching between peers, where if I was coaching a CEO, it would be, well, go get feedback from so-and-so and, find out their perspective. And that was usually within the organization.
If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts.
So I want to stay there for a moment if we could, though. So one of the things that I think you're 1,000% correct is this whole peer-to-peer model. So the old model, when you and I went to school, was whoever's at the front of the classroom or the workshop or whatever, they're way smarter than me, so I just better sit there and take it all in. I'm going to be a sponge. I'm going to write down a bunch of notes and just, yes, yes, yes. Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you. The reality is, as we start to understand adult learning theory more, particularly in the business environment, yes, you may be the expert in whatever your thing is, agility, resilience, creativity, innovation, whatever. However, I'm going to spend a lot of time with my peers in this room, and they see me every day the way I really show up in a meeting, attacking a problem, working with a client. And if we can scale them up to a baseline, that peer-to-peer piece is the most powerful behavior change. It's the basis of all the 12-step programs. It's the basis of everything. And it took us a really long time as adult learning people to realize, wait a minute, it's not about us. It's like, let's unleash the power that these smart people have. And by the way, we're jumping on a plane and going back to Denver tomorrow. So like, how do we do that? So it seems like that's sort of the basis, the underlying thinking. Is that right?
Yeah, kind of flipping the accountability model, letting people be self-directed, like you're describing, and at the same time tapping the expertise around them. Our research has shown that the average person has about 10 coach-ready skills that they can actually coach on. They have many more skills than that, but the coach-ready is kind of qualified, able, and willing. So you're surrounded by people who can help you get what you need. And, bite-sized, real-time, on-demand, skill-based, right? So it's not mentoring. That mentoring is kind of longer term, more career.
Yeah.
It's not executive coaching where there's a subject matter expert coming in on something to go deep. It's really just kind of getting what I need right now to take the next step in my journey to get results. And you're surrounded by people all the time that can do that for you. So unlock that.
Right. So I would imagine part of that is to get everyone in the organization to realize, okay, there's the 10 skills that Peter has, and here's the 10 skills that Roger has. And we don't have to have a long-term coaching relationship. I could just identify, wait, Roger has a skill that I need. Can I pick up the phone and call Roger on the third floor and say, hey, buddy, I need some help. And with this specific thing that I know you have expertise in.
That's right. And so in my past company, Partners in Leadership, we developed a digital platform for collaboration. We had about 1 million people on it. And now in this new business, we've created a software platform that helps to make those matches, coaching matches. But that's one of the things in terms of, this business that I've learned is, look, if you're not looking for digital solutions, you're toast. You've got to be able to scale digitally within an organization. And that has to be a part of your content package. And we found a nice match for that, because now when people get the insight, they go, oh my goodness, what do you mean? CEOs are saying, wait a minute, what you're telling me is I have 1,000 people in my organization. They each have 10,000 coach-ready skills. That means I have 10,000 coaches. Oh my goodness. How do I unlock that? Like, how do I get people connected? And of course, a digital solution really is the only efficient way to making those matches and getting that done. So
you have a cost factor, right? Digital is the only way to unleash that. The other piece is, one of the downsides of bringing in an external coach is sort of the culture fit. Do they really know how things go on here? There's all of that. So we're both at company X. We sort of know the way, wait, that's not going to fly here, because you might make a very well-intended recommendation as a coach, as the outsider, but have no idea that just won't work here. That's not the way it's done. If it's, whatever,
One of our studies showed that 68% of the coaching is done in 15 minutes or less, that people actually get today in organizations.
So now it's cheaper, it's faster.
That's right.
And I'm thinking it's better too. So that's interesting. You're really turning coaching on its head. Let's go half a step back to the digital piece that you said, because again, I couldn't agree more. This is getting boring to just constantly agree with you. We'll have to find something to disagree with about at some point. But COVID has forced this on people, and some people are doing it well, and some are like, oh, digital means I go on Zoom. No, I think I want to talk about, when you talk about digital solutions, it has to be designed as a digital solution, not a recording of, not something whose DNA is really analog, or this came out of a workshop. Talk about designing from digital from the bottom up. Like, this will only live in a digital world, what it needs to do, what pitfalls, things you need to look out for. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, you bet. My view on it, it has to be done in the context of kind of having a cultural impact. So you just can't throw software at an organization and expect it to work. Not this kind of software. It just won't. Right. So it has to be accompanied by a change in thinking. So the training side of it is really important. Like, marrying these two together is essential.
Yep.
So there's some content that goes along with helping people think differently about, when do I reach out for a coach? We have 5 coaching triggers. Is it okay to ask for help in our organization? Because right now, if you raise your hand and ask for help, you look like you're not doing your job. So there's some cultural shifts that kind of have to go along with this. That's accomplished through the training side. So we impact the way people think. And then when everyone's bought in and going, okay, what do I do? Then this digital piece comes in. And that digital piece has been designed to plug into the content. So they're not separable. You need the training concepts to go with the digital interaction to be the complete package to really work.
Okay. So I want to play that back to you. So if it was just, hey, I got an email today that we installed this new software, whatever, this new library, this new suite of tools. Hey, Peter, here's your login and credentials. Go at it.
Good
Not
luck.
so good, right? Yeah, good luck with that. We know what that looks like. You look 6 months later and there's a usability rate of like 7% or something,
Yeah.
if that, and they've used it once and whatever. So you have to set the table of coaching's not only acceptable, it's encouraged here. Here's why. So there's a cultural piece here. How does that get pushed out? Is that digital? Is that training? Or because if you don't lay that foundation, it sounds like software is just going to sit on a server somewhere or in the cloud or whatever.
Yeah, I always tell them it's not a coaching solution, it's a culture solution that's going to use coaching. And so, there's got to be kind of a management buy-in, and we encourage them to do coaching call-outs, their senior leadership meetings or their leadership meetings. They're telling stories about coaching, what's working, because leadership has to send the message, this is important to us. Like, we see this as essential to our growth and progress as an organization, so we're going to reinforce it. So like any culture change, you got to have that essential leadership buy-in to make it happen.
Are you starting then by working with the senior leadership team for whatever, 3 months, 6 months, whatever, to get them sort of inculcated?
Just usually what's happening is the leadership team is going through this process together. And then there's continued reinforcement with the leadership team on their role in reinforcing this culture change to a coaching culture. Well, there's so many organizations out there that are working on coaching and they're frustrated. There's a whole bunch of folks that are using mentoring to try to solve a coaching problem because mentoring was their tool of choice. That's what they understood and were familiar with. So part of this is kind of redefining the problem in a way they understand it. And then once they do, it's getting really clear about, okay, how do we attack that? And isolating that as a variable, meaning what our people need is coaching right now, that bite-sized, real-time, on-demand kind of interaction. And once an organization gets that insight, this is a pretty easy thing to understand and focus on.
Got it. So as we start to wrap up, if there's someone out there now who's got some great content, maybe they've written a book or they're acknowledged in their field or they're doing some speaking or whatever, let's call them, Roger 20 years ago, 25 years ago, whatever. And they want to have a level of success either measured by the impact, the amount of people they're touching, as well as revenue generating. And any words of wisdom that you'd have for them? No pressure, but we're all leaning in now, Roger.
Yeah. This is going to be tough. So two things, just instinctually. Number one, what you're doing is already too complicated. Just I love it. Just understand that it's way too complicated. Whatever it is, I haven't seen it yet, but I already know it's too complicated. So step one is to simplify and reduce so that people can remember it and scale it. So that's number one. Then number two is make sure that you're constantly tuning it to solve the problem it was designed to solve. Because right now it probably doesn't do it quite the way you need it to. So you have to continually to be inventive about getting it right. And if you have a passion for getting it right and keeping it simple, you'll win.
Very well said, because I think there's a tendency for smart people to constantly, in the spirit of making it better and having a new way to do it and thinking about it further and further, it sort of becomes like the attic, and there's a lot of stuff in there, right? But the attic is usually not the most organized room in the home. So
Agreed.
Keep it simple. I love it. So anyway, this has been great. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all that you shared. And I think there's lots that we can learn from your journey. And I wish you continued success with this newer phase.
No, thanks so much, Peter. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.